In this video, we're going to talk about Python conditions and if statements, and I'm going to teach you how to use these statements in your coding and programs. If you want to learn more about Python and other programming languages, make sure you subscribe to the channel. And if you enjoyed this video, please like it. It will be a great support. Let's begin. First, let's talk about logical conditions. Well, Python supports the usual logical conditions from mathematics like equals, not equals, less than or equal to, greater than, and greater than or equal to. Well, as you see here, I have written all these six conditions, and we will go through them one by one to see how they work and in what ways you can use them and when and where you can use these logical conditions. They are really necessary to know, and you have to actually be careful about using them and practice more in order to be more familiar with these conditions. Let's see how we can use them. So let's use them in if statements. Well, in order to actually write if statement, you have to use if keyword. And actually, after if keyword, you have to write your condition. For example, here, let's prior to this line, let's define some variables in order to work with them. For example, x equals to 5 and y equals to 6. Okay, so now I want to use if statement. We use if keyword, and after if keyword, okay, I have to use the condition. For example, I want to check equals. Let's see. X equals y. Okay, don't forget to use colon, and when you hit enter, it automatically go to next line, and you see here this indentation here, and I'll tell you more about it. Let's just print something like print here if x equals to y. I want to print x equals to y. Okay, let's use small y and here small x. Okay, if I run it, well, you see nothing happened because they are not equals. Let me change it to 5, and you see here the output. Now let's actually delete this white space and run it again. You see here we face an error, expected an indented block. Well, in Python, actually Python relies on indentation. By indentation, I mean the white space at the beginning of the line, okay? As you saw for a print line. And this, actually Python uses this indentation to define scope in the code, okay? And other programming languages like C# or C++ use curly brackets in order to actually define this scope. So you have to bear in mind that when you want to actually define a block of code, like in if statements or later in loops, you have to be careful about these indentation. And let's check another condition. For example, in here we actually checked equal, and now I want to check not equal. For example, in here I want to use not equals, and I want to change it to, for example, 6, and now x is 5 and y is 6, so this code must be executed because it will enter this block because x not equals to y. Now if I run it, you see this code is actually this print line is executed, and you can use other logical conditions like greater than or greater and equal to be more familiar with them. Now I want to talk about Elif keyword, or let's see else if in maybe other programming languages. This keyword in Python actually is another way of saying, for example, the previous condition were not true, then try this condition. For example, in here, let me change it to equals. In here we see if x equals to y, this block of code or this line is executed, and I want to say if, for example, this condition is not true, let's try another condition. For example, let's use Elif in here, and you have to be careful about indentation, so you have to use Elif in here. Let's use small e Elif, okay? and you actually write your condition. So I checked whether they are equals or not, and in here I want to say if they are not equal, now check this condition, which is, for example, y greater than x. So don't forget to use colon, and here print, for example, y is greater than x. So let's use small y here. Now if I run it, you see this line is executed, because in here first checks whether x equals y, and because this was not true, so in here says okay, because this is not true, now check this one. And when checks this condition, if it is true, because here y is greater than x, it will enter this block and will execute this. You can use another elif or else if. Here use elif. Don't forget to use elif keyword in Python. And let's see, for example, x greater than y. And you can use print here, like write the same code and just change y to x and x to y, and here. So in here it will check whether x equals to y, and it will go through this condition if y is greater than x, and if those conditions were not true, now let's check this one, x is greater than y. And if I change, for example, here y to 3, and now x is greater than y, so we expect that this line to be executed, okay? And if I run it, you see here x is greater than y, which is this line. We have another keyword, which is else, and the else keyword catches anything which is actually not caught by the previous conditions. And in here we specified the condition. We say if x equals to y, if for example y greater than x or x greater than y, we specify. But in else you do not say anything. You say if the previous conditions were not true, just try this one. You do not specify any new conditions. Okay, so let me just delete these conditions. Okay, and now just use else. Okay, so in here I say if x is not equal to y, now use this block. We do not specify any new condition. Okay, so whether x is greater than y or y is greater than x, this line, which is else, will be executed. So let's print. In here we do not know now whether x is greater than y or y is greater than x. Just we know that this condition is not true, so the only thing that we know is that x is not equal to y when actually this line is executed. So we say here x is not for example equal to y. Okay, and now if I run it, you see this line is executed. Let's talk about another concept, which is shorthand if. If you have only one statement to execute, you can put it in actually the same line as if statement. So for example, in here a equals to 7 and b equals to 8, and in here I use if statement, and I want to use one line if statement if a, for example, is greater than b. So here use a colon, and you just need to write one line actually in the same line as if statement. So I write print, for example, because I just want to write one line. So I write print a is greater than b. So if I execute this, nothing happened because a is not greater than b. So let's change it to, for example, 2, and now a is greater than b, so this one line is working. You have to bear in mind that when you have just one line to be executed in actually if block, so you just need to use one line if statement, because it will actually be more clean and your code will not be so complicated. We have two keywords and or. We use them and actually combine them with conditional statements, and I want to show you how you can use them. Sometimes you have actually two conditions and you want both of them to be true at the same time, or both of them to be false at the same time in order to actually execute a block of code. In those conditions, you use AND keyword with if statements. Let me show you one. For example, in here we have three variables. A equals to, for example, 12, and B equals to, for example, 5, and C equals to 9. And in here I use if statement. I want to actually print hello when A is greater than B and also B is greater than C. Okay, I want both of these conditions to be true. Let's, for example, try A is actually greater than B, and I use and C is greater than B. Okay, let me change it. I want to change it to 2 here. So now A is greater than B and B is greater than C. So in here I'm going to change it to B is greater than C, as I said first time. Okay, and here I want to print, for example, hello world. Okay, it might be somehow meaningless actually. And now let's analyze this line. So in here I say if A is greater than B and B is greater than C. So in order for this line to be executed, both of these conditions, which are on the right and left of AND keyword, this one and this one, both of them have to be true. Okay, if only one of them is false, this line will not be executed. So you have to bear in mind that when you want to actually check whether two conditions are true at the same time, you have to use AND keyword. If I run it, you see it is true. But if I, for example, change C to, for example, 8, and now if I run it, you see nothing happened because one of these conditions is not true. So this line is not executed. Vice versa, we have OR keyword. If I use OR, actually when sometimes you use OR in order to check whether just one of these conditions, this one or this one, is true. If only one of them is true, this line is executed. So for example, in here A is greater than B, A is 12 and B is 5, so that's true. And because this is true, we do not care about this one, because this one is true, this line will be executed. And let's, for example, check here, B is greater than C, B is 5, C is 8, so this is not true. However, it is not actually necessary here. So if I run it, you see the result is printed. And if the only actually condition which this code is not executed is that both of these conditions are false. For example, B is greater than C, and if I change it, B is greater than A, and if I run it, you see nothing happens because both of these conditions are false. So sometimes you want to check whether one of both conditions are true. You can use OR keyword. Let's talk about nested if. You can have if statement inside another if statement, and it is called nested if. Let's try it here. For example, I write if A is actually greater than B. So I want to actually enter this block. So in here, I want to check whether C is greater than B again. Okay, I can check it in here and use AND keyword, and sometimes you do not need to use AND keyword. You want to use nested if. You can check it in here. Okay, because A is greater than B, so I entered this block, and in here actually I can use another condition. For example, if C is greater than B. Okay, and here I can use actually print, and I can use write A and C are greater than B. Okay, you have to be careful about indentation here, don't forget that. And I can use else here, and I can use print, for example, and here I write A and C are not greater than B. Okay, and here let's run it. You see A and C are greater than B. Here, if first this one is checked, A is greater than B, so we entered this block, and now we are here in this line. and because C is also greater than B, this line is executed, and because this one is true, so we do not actually enter else block, and we actually go out of this block. And I can tell you, if you write anything in here, for example in here, if I write print end of first if, okay, in here you see this line will be executed because here A is greater than B, so we enter this block and we check this line, it is true, and we print this, and it will not go through this block, but it will actually go after the remaining code, which is in if block. Okay, so in here this line will be also executed. If I run it, you see it is executed, but you have to be careful about indentation. This print and this actually indentation here shows that this line is actually included in this if block, and if I use, for example, this indentation, it means that this print is actually included in else block. So you have to be really careful about indentation in Python. And if I run it, you see it is not printed because of only indentation. The last concept that I want to talk about is pass statements. If the statements cannot be empty, let's check. For example, in here I use if A greater than B, and if I, for example, here say nothing, if I execute it, you see here expected an indented block. It means that you have to write something inside this block, and for some reasons you might face this condition and you do not need to write anything inside this if block, and you just want to somehow pass this block and execute the rest of your code. And in these situations you can actually put the pass statement inside this block to avoid getting an error. If I write pass here, if I execute it, it will actually pass this block and go to the next lines and execute the rest of the code. So pass, we use pass sometimes when you do not want to write anything inside this block, although this block should not be empty. Okay, here is the end of this session. I hope it was useful for you. Now you know everything about if, else if, and else in Python, and you can use these conditions and also logical conditions in various ways, and you know how to deal with them, how to actually get rid of errors, and you have to be careful about indentation. I have to repeat it several times. Don't forget to care about indentation. If you want to learn more about Python and other programming languages, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and if you enjoyed this video and find it useful, don't forget to like it. If you have any questions, leave comments. I'll reach you as soon as possible. Bye for now.